when I bought the business from him. My dad always told me, if you grow too big, you're going to sell yourself to the business. And that was almost like fuel to the fire of like, I will prove you wrong, Dad. We grew to 50 employees in like 4 years. And again, I was a counseling degree. So I didn't even know what a P&L was. Like I had a CFO that handled all that. We were too big for our britches. So part of our story is, we were bankrupt on paper in 2018.
Welcome back to the Dataliction Podcast, where we learn from leaders whose experience and faith shape how they grow their companies on purpose. Our guest today is Parker Perrien, co-CEO of Diamond Solutions. Parker bought his dad's striping business at 23, grew it to 50 employees in 4 years, and by 2018 was bankrupt on paper. And what followed was a rescue, a mentor who quietly became a substitute for God, and a diagnosis that shook him awake. We get into the core values you actually hire and fire by, a company whose mission is to worship with their work, and the practice he calls pray and watch. And now let's jump into that conversation.
I always go back to the Jim Collins book, Good to Great. And I say that EOS Traction is the best business book I've ever read. If I could go to business college or read EOS, I would just say read EOS. It solved so much, it brought so much clarity to Diamond back in 2018. I had 3 people over a span of like 2 weeks that were like, have you read EOS? Like really randomly. And I was like, apparently I should read this book called Traction. And I'd read Good to Great. He talks about the bus, right? And all the, gives you, Jim Collins kind of paints that picture. But then EOS is like the bus is your core values. And then the seats are the GWs who do they get it? Do they want it? Do they have the capacity? And it gave you this kind of, and how do you know if they get it? Well, here's some questions you can ask to see if they get the position. And it really started to build out, you can imagine the driver's seat and the shotgun seat, right? And then you go, well, how do I make my core values, right? And it gives you the whole framework for how to come up with your core values. So I start there because that to me is like just foundational to like, you can have core values, but do you use them? Do you hire, fire, reward off of them? How do you do that? How do you reward? And so EOS really gives that structure to it.
If you are going to give a definition of culture and values, those kind of two things, maybe people haven't heard of the idea of values or the concept of culture. How do you define that? How do you implement the idea of culture? Because it can feel, it's sometimes a feeling, but you're attaching it to a value, which I appreciate. So define culture, define values for us.
Well, I'll tell you what comes to my mind. I remember sitting in a room with my leadership team back in 2018, and EOS again gives you the framework for how to come up with your values. And it felt really selfish to me because a lot of it was like, well, what is Parker like? And I was like, okay, this is a little weird. Like this is like the President the Parker show, But as you start to do it and you realize like Parker has a can-do attitude. Like when we started striping parking lots and then we started paving, I didn't know how to pave, but I was like, we can do it. We'll figure it out. Like I flew out to a company in North Carolina. I rode on the paver for 2 days, like on right beside my friend that was paving. And I was like, this is what you do? Like, this is how to pave? I'm like, we can figure it out. So I went and rented a paver and ended up, so that was a value that I had. And I realized that I really didn't like working with people who had a can't do attitude. And that's not a right or wrong. That's not a moral issue, right? Like you can be a great person and have a can't do attitude, have a little more reserved. But I had a can do attitude. And so when I work with people with that, we could move, right? And we weren't always debating, can we actually figure this out? It's like, how can we figure this out? So we sat in a room, came up with a long list of values that kind of described Parker. Grit. Well, grit was actually, we had it later after COVID, but always learning, always growing, add value, which was like nobody has you never say that's not my job. It's like we just kind of, if you have a God-given talent, we hired you for this, but we didn't realize you could do this, then like use your gifts over here, right? So open and honest, like transparency, as already on the show, is like I'm an open book. Like, to me, honesty is not just telling the truth when it works. It's telling the truth when it hurts you, right? Like that is when you know that like you're dealing with somebody who's, I made some mistakes in my life, but this is what I learned, or whatever, right? It's not you're not trying to protect your image or whatever, right? So,
yeah, I think that answers quite well what you are diving into. But my question is, what about the layers that you have in the management team? So meaning that it's great to communicate that to your first level managers, but how does that get translated down throughout the whole culture, the whole organization? Or how do you do that?
Yeah. I think that the hiring people that carry those values is really critical. I can't take credit for the people that we have in our LT, today. I mean, it's been a God thing in terms of our COO, Jason. I asked one of our guys at the time that was working here before Jason, I said, "Hey, who do you know that's the best person that's good with people?" And he was like, immediately, like, "I've got a guy." And I called Jason. He had a great job. He wasn't looking for, to switch. I think we talked for 6 months. Like I don't even think my motivations were pure, but it was like, I had questions and he was really wise. And so I would call him with questions, and over time we built a friendship, and it was like, when the time was right, it happened. And he jumped on because he felt led to do that. It wasn't like but Jason carries and embodies those core values, right? I think I always thought to have somebody who was really great with sales, which is what Jason originally came on for. You would have some sort of really great car salesman. That's what I had in my mind, but it was like sleazy. And I was like, I'm just not willing to I don't care how good you are at sales. Like, I don't want sleazy salesmen. So like, I couldn't imagine somebody who really cared for people and was a great salesperson. I just didn't have a lot of examples of that. But Jason came on and, as taken the baton and ran with that. So in terms of how we perpetuate the core values, I would say we have our weekly L10s. We have just a lot of things that at this point that are, we do core value bonuses. We have hero of the month where people vote on, who's done things that, are good kind of core value related. So there's the hire, fire, and rewarding. The rewarding part is the perpetuation of that. I could go on and on. I mean, we do a lot of, okay, we have a lot of room to grow. I don't want to sound like we have it all figured out, but when I think about all the little things that happen, there's just a lot of little touches. It's not like there's one big, monumental thing.
Yeah. So Parker, I want to hear from your history of how you got to these values, because obviously values very seldom just arrive. Typically, you find them because somebody did something right and you realized, ooh, I want to keep doing that. Or somebody does something wrong and you realize, I don't ever want to do that again. And so, along the way, you're obviously wanting to keep it simple, clear, and fast when it comes to these values. I'm seeing that all over your content and your website. I love that. But what are those stories of situations you're like, oh, I love that, I hate that? How do we build a system around this that's repeatable for our people to have access and really live out the culture that you're wanting people to feel?
Yeah. So I think about our core value of grit, our sixth core value. It was a reaction, right? It was finally, it was like we had some people that were on the ship that left after COVID, and we were like trying to figure out why we lost people that we thought like they embodied the core values. And they left, and it seemed like COVID was kind of it was really hard. I mean, COVID was hard for all of us, right? But that was where we came up with grit. So that was a reaction to a problem where we were like, we don't totally have that nailed down.
I'm wondering, when do you find that you need to add a core value?
The book has been closed. The canon has been closed.
I think
we have 6 core values. They we might tweak them, reward them. We haven't done that yet. Every quarterly, we revisit, say, hey, do we still feel that these core values embody, us and hold? And it's like they really capture. I don't know that it always works that way, but what we came up with in 2018 has stuck. So we continue to refine behaviors that are specifics. I'm trying to think of the book I think it's called Fundamentals by David something, that talks about like the Ritz-Carlton, and they came up with these behaviors, right, that were very specific. Like we respond to emails within 30 minutes, or not just saying we're responsive. Like, what does that mean? That could mean different things to everybody. So behaviors are continuing to be added as kind of ways to nuances to reinforce.
So that's an interesting perspective here. And I've seen both sides of this from a lot of leaders. There's sometimes you help people think a certain way, and then it helps them change their behaviors. And other times people really believe if you make sure to give people a good habit of behaviors, it ends up changing the way you think. Do you lean one way or another? Do you try to keep it balanced? Or what's your perspective on that? Because I don't ever mind helping people just know this is what you do. And I think that's great. Right. but obviously we want them to continue to be empowered for those outlier situations to help their judgment. So what's your balance there for, obviously your leaders need better judgment than support staff and people facilitating, but what's your way of thinking versus doing in leading a culture?
Well, this might be what comes to my mind here is just the tech piece, right? So we're tech is we're constantly building technology around the manual processes so that we reinforce the behaviors that we want. So we're obviously, tech, as you know, is it takes a while to build we're building an end-to-end platform, right? But the how we communicate with customers, what are the touches? What's the cadence of that touch? What's the message? Like, we want it to be the same message from everybody. We're not building a custom, like this guy can say it this way and this guy. Surely there's always going to be some room for that. But like in the terms of hey, we're going to be on your site tomorrow, have these things ready for our crew. That's standardized, right? The 3-day look ahead, the 1 week look ahead. Hey, we're going to be there next week. Just kind of all of that stuff. So automating communication, so that a lot of our behaviors are around communication. In the construction world, the biggest problem, if you've ever worked with contractors, I'm sure you have, is communication. It's just it's like so painful. And so we deal with a lot of that pain because we're a broker, for lack of a better word, but. So yeah, we're constantly dealing with that.
Parker, I'm going to switch gears here just for a little bit right now. So I'm curious, what is it that your core, so you talked about the core of your business, but tell me about your core and the fundamentals on how your lens is to your leaders. So talk to me, like, what is kind of your foundation that helps say, this is what centers me. And this is how I kind of view the world. Sometimes we view the world in a blue ocean or a red ocean, depending upon how you look at it. So walk me through a little bit, like where do you see yourself? And like, kind of what are some of those fundamentals that you anchor yourself to?
I think the most obvious one is God first. So that's like on my shirt. It's a daily thing for me. This is accountability for me. I always tell people this isn't for you, it's for me. I think that I went to college for biblical counseling back in 2013. Guys, I'm blanking out. What year? Like 2009. I'm so sorry. 2009. Went to college. Did not finish my biblical counseling degree, but that stemmed from a core early on for me. I worked with my dad from when I was 17 to around 23 when I bought the business from him. And I remember I would ride in the truck to job sites. And I would basically be counseling somebody. Like, we would be talking about Jesus, about a relationship. And when we'd get our workout in on the job site, and then I would get paid really well. And I was like, this is like 3 really cool boxes to check, get the workout, get the spiritual side of things, and make some money. And so when we started to grow, I think the thought was, my dad always told me, if you grow too big, you're gonna sell yourself to the business. And I was like, that was almost like fuel to the fire of like, I will prove you wrong, Dad. I also saw people do kind of like the church road, like the Y in the road is how I visually in my mind was like, there's a Y of like, you either do ministry or you do business. And I was like, I want to do both. And so early on, that was part of our story and part of the core of who I was, with like, I just wanted to love people. And if you kind of fast forward, we grew from like, when I bought my dad out, we were a couple employees. We grew to 50 employees in like 4 years. And again, I was a counseling degree. So I had no idea I didn't even know what a P&L was. Like, I had a CFO that handled all that. I should say I didn't know what it was, but I was not reviewing P&Ls. I wasn't reviewing numbers, we were too big for our britches. So part of our story is, we were bankrupt on paper in 2018. And I would say that part of my core up to that point was very, I'd say like maybe too much leaning on the spiritual side, right? Like we would pray, and you should, for work to come in, and we would pray for all the time. And again, can't pray too much, but like, you still should know the numbers, right? You should still know like, hey, what's our payroll, and can we make payroll next week? Like, that's probably, you should just pray and hope that it works out, and that when you hit like, submit payroll, that everybody gets their check, right? Like, there's a balance here, right? So I'm not saying that's exactly what we were doing, but it was leaning too much on the side of just hope and pray, and God will take care of it. And in 2018, he took care of it in some ways that were hard, right? I ended up meeting a mentor just through providentially. He brought somebody into my life before I even knew I needed to know Ron. He brought Ron into my life. And when I got the call that, hey, we're 2 weeks away from not making payroll, I had a guy to call, right? And so Ron became a mentor, a part owner of the company, and so cool to look back and see God's, hand in all of that. But I would say, who Parker was in that time swung to the other side. So at my core, I became very numbers driven, very data driven. And this is not Ron's fault, but I would say that Ron kind of functionally became my God, because when I had a problem, I didn't pray, I called Ron. And Ron, he loved Jesus, but he was brilliant. And so he is brilliant. So, he had answers, and his answers worked. We started to make more money. We were debt free within a couple of years. We paid off millions of dollars of debt. And it was like, this is working. And so then I always say, be careful what you experience, because experience solidifies belief. And I experienced that you make a lot of money when you forget about God and you just call Ron. Like, not a great thing to solidify, right? Like, it doesn't have to be either or, it's both and. But for me, it was very much solidifying. Things went really well in life when I didn't pray and when I didn't lean on God. So I would say kind of a spiritual drought, financially doing great, spiritual drought. 2023, my daughter, who's 3.5 today, we got the call that no parent wants to get, that she was going to be born with trisomy 18. In fact, we were told she would never be born. She wasn't going to live. And that was God's way, I think, of just shocking me, right? Like that was that's when God first kind of started. That's when things in my life kind of started. Like, I'm not on the right path. I got off a path that I care about, but he used Thea's life to kind of some pretty hard lessons. But I'll pause there. I was long.
Parker, how did you swing back to the balance of ensuring that you are leaning on God, you're praying, you're ensuring you're not just out on your own looking at the numbers, but then also not ignoring the numbers again? Because oftentimes I see the pendulum just swing back and forth instead of find a nice level. So obviously you referenced, you aren't looking at the numbers, things go bad, you swing over to the other side, you find more success in the numbers, but you lose your way, you lose your faith. Then this moment happens. It appears that you're still looking for balance, but finding better balance than you have before. What were some of the things that you noticed in yourself? Were there steps that you took? Were there habits that you formed for yourself as well as your team?
Two things come to mind. One is, God first as a movement, or as a whatever. It's my journey, like, of trying to like really find real answers to questions that, prayer was one of the early things with Thea. People would say, I'm praying for Thea before she was born. And I was like, I don't know why you're praying. Like, I've heard this my whole life. We pray for things, but like, what does it do? Like, God is good. God is sovereign. I'm not mad at God. So what am I praying for? Like, she's either going to live or she's not. Like, babies die all the time. So what am I praying? Like, does this actually change the outcome? I would say that I learned that I believe it does, which is a whole deep, lot. But like, God first as is basically like me recording my questions and my walk back to, like, I would say coming back to Jesus, but like really saying, hey, I'm here, but like, I really want to understand these things, like forgiveness. How do we forgive people? Like, it's easy to say, but like, what does that really mean? And I would say, if you think it's simple, obviously it's super complex, right? So back in 2024, Hope and our co-CEOs, right? So she comes to me and she's like, hey, we really need a mission statement. Actually, it was funny. C12 would always ask me, my C12 chair would ask me, hey, Parker, what's your mission? I'm like, we don't have one. Like, I know we're supposed to, but I think like we had a mission. It was really long and I didn't really buy it. It was like, it's good, but like, I would never tell somebody what it was. And I forget if it was Hope or how this came about, but the question was asked basically like, if there was something that you had to give up, what would be the one thing that if you gave up, like, you wouldn't want to do Diamond? And I'm like, if I could not love, like, if Jesus could not be a part of our company and like the way that we loved our customers, and that was not like an integral part, like I'm out. Like, at some point, like, I would rather just go do ministry. Like, I always felt that calling. And so long story short, our mission is that we exist to worship with our work. And that for me really brought and kind of reinforced this idea that God first isn't a separation from Diamond. It's part of Diamond. So we are like, hey, if you want to wear God first on a job site, we have a Diamond logo on the back. It's like, just to kind of make it feel like it's still a Diamond branded, whatever. But like, you can wear God first hats, you can wear God first clothes, you can give it to contract. I don't care, but like, we can wear it in a meeting with as big or small of customers as you want when you're doing a presentation. God first can be, I don't care, right? But like, you can wear diamond gear or you can wear God first gear. They're both approved. And for me, that was a way of like, just bringing that faith component back to where I didn't have to leave work to go get the faith. It was integrated.
Yeah, what I'm hearing is a prioritization of the things that still must be done, but ordering them in the correct way. And, James Clear says that every action you take is a vote for the type of person you wish to become. But the order in which you do those, I'm adding this amendment here, every action that you take in the order you do it. And so with God first, you're still doing the work, but you're going to worship first and focus on God, and then you're going to get the work done. So Travis, I saw you were about to say something.
Yeah, I'm wondering, Parker, what is it that, you mentioned either we go really far towards God or we go really far towards numbers. And I feel like that's kind of a struggle that we as leaders have quite a bit. We're like, which ones, I remember when I was doing a food delivery company, and when we would send out text messages for sales, you kind of felt like God, because you're like, look how many orders now are coming in, and you'd run sales and things like that. And but one of the things that where do you see that leaders really miss it? Like where is it that they miss the mark on trying to balance this out?
I think for me, it's been so much of it's been rhythms and like habits, right? Like and that's what I love about, EOS L10, like every week we have an L10, and in those L10s we have agendas, and in those agendas you can add things to the agenda that help, that you'll do them every time. Right. And so I think that is like praying before a meeting. Sounds simple. This is part of the, my journey with prayer was like, when I pray, I want to really pray. I don't want to just be like, all right, we're going to pray before a meeting and we just did the thing. So for me, prayer, but I spent like over a year studying prayer, reading books on prayer and going deep on like, I really want to understand when I pray in a meeting, what am I praying for? Like, right. And so I think for me, I don't know that everybody's wired that way, but I just don't like doing things that are just perfunctory or like we just do them to do them. So when we pray for sales or we pray for an employee who has something in their life going on, like we're praying. Like this is not, you know what I mean? And I think that makes it so much more, your desire to do it's increased because you're excited to do it. You believe that it actually has a meaningful impact. And so when you really start to integrate spirituality into your business in a way that's meaningful, I think that it's not as hard because you realize like, and one of my big things is pray and watch, right? There's so many times that I have prayed and I was missing that God was acting, but sometimes it's unfolding. And if you don't look back and watch what he's doing, you'll miss it. And so I would say that with with Diamond, we have a lot of fun praying and then watching. And it's like, it is crazy to see the way that things come together. You're like, I would have never met that person if I hadn't have. And it was on the day that I prayed that random phone call came in that you knew had nothing to do with, obviously to do with the answer that you were looking for. But it's a lot of fun.
That absolutely, I love that. Pray and watch. That answered quite a bit, because how often do we pray and then that prayer is answered and then we forget to remember it? I mean, we look at the Old Testament. Yeah, like journaling is a major part in my walk.
Yes.
And just looking back at what I've prayed and over time, you're like, oh man, like God has answered so many of these prayers.
I haven't found a great way to say it, but one of the thoughts I have is if we only knew the things that we're walking through each day that are part of the unfolding of the story that we've asked for God, like the answers that we've asked God for, we would be amazed. And I think that if you can live in that and be aware of that today I'm walking out, this is not, this is providential that we're sitting here having this podcast. I don't know what part in the story that I've been asking God for that this is going to play into, but right, like it's unfolding as we speak. And so learning to kind of revel in that and sit in that, I'm not always able to do that, but I think I have moments where I'm like, I wonder what this is I'm going to look back on, and today, this moment was an answer to something I had asked for, or that, that how God was shaping me to be the person that he wanted me to be.
Parker, your faith is inspiring, and it's very clear that the reason your company's culture is what it is is because you've been leading them by example, by what you've been doing, not just saying. I appreciate that. I also love that you've been systematizing this in a way that they have access to it. Because it's one thing to say, hey, be this kind of person, but you're really helping them. You're laying it out in your values. You're putting it into the actual function of your day to day. I'm very impressed by all of those things, especially across the board. I mean, you are a national company, and you being able to pour out yourself into a company that then can continue to cascade from leaders into your support staff is really incredible. What have been some of the things that you've learned as you've scaled that are really important to ensure that that cascade continues on and that it doesn't get blocked with the next site that you open up or the next hire? How are you ensuring that cascade continues?
Well, I think the secret sauce to Diamond, and this is, you kind of look at this a couple different ways, but Hope and I are co-CEOs. We figured out this structure, if you will, through a lot of different iterations of structure. And I think we're on year 2 now, maybe, or I don't know. It's been a couple of years now of us being co-CEOs. She's over finance and marketing. I'm over sales and ops, and then we share tech. And I'm just telling you, man, it is so much fun. And I tell, like, Hope is the, her ability to see systems and processes and take vision to action is really incredible. Like when we're building tech, she's able to think about how this will impact that and how that will impact this. And my brain's is like, I don't really, that just hurts. I just have like an idea and I want to, like, this is the end goal and I see the picture. And so I think that the way that we have been able to scale and the way that we, got out of kind of some of the hamster wheel that a lot of people get stuck in is because I was out kind of doing the operations and the sales and blowing things up, making messes. And then she was like, we need to have a repeatable process for this. And I'm like, early on, I was like, repeatable process. Like, it's different every time. It's like, and I've had, which was such an evolution of myself of going from like, you can't systematize this. You can't, it's so many different variables to this, and then to now where I'm like, oh, I don't know what it is, but there's a way to have a way. And it might be a decision matrix that hurts my head, but there is a way to have if then this and if that then this and whatever. And Hope's brain is just wired to think like that. So
I appreciate your humility to admit that you are on a team. And that's very inspiring. I think it's part of what is working for you. If something continues to succeed, it's continuing to succeed for a reason. And I really appreciate that. I want to lean into two things. On your website, you say that your relationships are your company's most valuable asset, which I see that in you. It's obviously part of what you're doing. But then also for you to reference, you've said tech several times. To me, that is fascinating considering the line of work that you do. I would not say that at large, painting with a broad brush, that your line of work would be a high tech, but you've said that the implementing technology has helped you to scale and connect people. Just share kind of as we wrap up a little bit on how you guys are exploring tech, because Travis and I are very, passionate about seeing the way technology has developed over these last 3 years specifically to help people like you. How are you guys launching that, testing it, helping your people to actually adopt it? Yeah, just dealer's choice, whatever you want to run with on how you guys are using tech.
Man. Well, we've kind of went from, I think about the early days of when I was in paint.net, pulling up a Google Earth photo and making repairs on a map that if you wanted to go back to the first repair and you were on repair 40, you had to hit undo 39 times to get back to the first repair. I mean, that was many years ago. Rob Parrish, who came on, I think back in 2017, I'm shooting from the hip there, was like, hey, why don't we use Adobe? And I'm like, man, I'm like, paint.net's great. I didn't want to switch. And he's like, let me show you. And so next thing you know, we're making maps in Adobe and we're like, these maps went from 0 to 100 and they were cool looking maps. Again, repair maps of where the asphalt was at. And then in 2000, it doesn't matter, I guess, but just roughly 2021, I think is when my brother came on. He worked at Uber. He was a software developer there. And we started building custom tech. So we kind of went from, Rob had everything in Excel. We had dug deep holes in Excel to building custom tech, which I didn't even know what that meant. I thought I was just, it's just tech. And I mean, building custom tech is hard. I'm sure you guys know it is not for the faint of heart. It's expensive. It's easy to go the wrong direction, and you can kind of build anything you want, but be careful, you can dig even bigger holes. So, I think that where our tech is at today is pretty cool to think about. We have the same amount of employees roughly today. I don't know, 10x the size that we were 8 years ago with the same amount of, the employees that are much, much, much smaller. So we've been able to scale with, actually, I think we have less employees than we did when we were a $5 million company back in 2017 or whatever. So, tech has been a lot of fun.
I am grateful that we're able to take our teams and help them be everything that they can be by leveraging tech augmentation, enhancement, helping them do what they do really well, what they love to do more, and then being able to automate, connect, simplify the things on the back end that let computers do computer work and let humans do human work.
Well said. Yes. No, I was thinking people, it's very common, right? They're like, well, are we just going to replace? And I'm like, I don't know, man, but that's not the reason you do it. I mean, if you think about all of the manual data entry and the typing this and that, it's is that relational? No, that's not relational. So if you could spend more time on the phone talking about their family or their life or whatever with the customer and be like, oh, by the way, I just sent you 25 proposals with the click of a button. That's the goal, right? Is to take the data entry and be able to focus on the communication and the relationship.
I love how Zig Ziglar says, people still buy from people, and people are relational. And I think that that's where you've nailed it, especially, thinking about your process and your people, and also having the right sites, having God first on there has been really impactful. So, Parker, as we wrap up, I think about the L10s. So I'd say level 10, meaning that's from EOS and traction. And so what is a professional and personal win for you here lately?
Professional and personal win. Man, I guess I would just say that, this most recent, I think I was sharing with you guys before, right? So the God First Facebook page has just kind of blown up recently, and went from 88 followers 3 weeks ago to I think should hit 40,000 today. I don't even really know what that means. I've never really been in this world of followers and whatever. One of the things I didn't expect was to get 50 messages a day on, right now we're doing a topic of forgiveness, is kind of the focus. And it's this is kind of crazy. I've had people asking for prayers, and I had my number listed on the Facebook page, my phone number, which has been removed. Didn't know how that got there, but I had people calling me hey, can you pray with me? And I did. I prayed with them. I'm and I'm going to take my number off. But I don't honestly know where it's going. Like I said, this is kind of me walking out, kind of trying to find real answers to what I would say are harder questions, and seeing that bless other people is just, it's really cool to be have messages from people saying this really encouraged me or helped me with a relationship. And it's that's awesome.
Pray and watch. That is the phrase that I'm carrying out of this one. And right behind it sits Parker's warning. Experience solidifies belief, so be careful what you teach yourself to trust. He learned it the hard way twice and came back with a company where God first is not separate from work. It is the work. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Dataliction Podcast. Near the end, we landed on a line worth repeating. Let computers do computer work so your people can do people work. Parker's company grew tenfold without growing its payroll because the software finally fit the business instead of the reverse. And at Dataliction, that's what our team builds exactly. Your own all-in-one platform shaped on how your company truly operates, free of the clutter that comes with software written for everybody, everywhere, all the time. It's usually cheaper than all those subscriptions that have just been quietly draining your budget right now. So visit Dataliction.com, book a free call with our team, and find out what your people could do with their hours back.